Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome to the Xiaolin Perspectives. And well, today we're going to be discussing the very first episode of Xiaolin Showdown, The Journey of 1,000 Miles. And well, like I said, as the title of the episode implies, this is the beginning of our journey through this series. And the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So it's time we just kind of jump right in. So, I was kind of wondering how I'd be able to actually introduce this episode. Should I, make it all grandiose or whatever? Should I explain everything? Well, not really. Mostly because, unlike the last few series that I've done vlogs on, this series, the Xiaolin Showdown, does actually give us an origin, so to speak. And that origin is given, via some exposition. Basically, the prologue for the series is that thousands of years prior, there was a great Xiaolin dragon warrior by the name of Dashi. And Dashi was the original owner of these artifacts called Shengang Wu, which I talked about in the prologue, but in case you didn't watch that, that's kind of a big thing in the series. Basically, the Shengang Wu were all these mystical power artifacts, and he used them in defending the world, especially against a great evil witch by the name of Wuya. And their clash with each other is, as the legend says, the very first Xiaolin Showdown, as Dashi used not only all of his fighting techniques, but the power of all the Shengang Wu to duke it out against Wuya's evil Xiaolin magics. Xiaolin being the word they use to describe the bad guys in the show. And ultimately, the battle ended with victory for the good guys, as Dashi was able to trap Wuya inside a mystical puzzle box. As such, with Wuya defeated, Dashi scattered all of his Shengang Wu around the world, hiding them in various places where they lay dormant, and for all those thousands of years were secretly maintaining the balance between good and evil in the world, which is where they are to this day, or more specifically to this day when the show takes place. And well, once that exposition up is done, we actually get into the series proper, as the episode opens up, in China, specifically on a temple in the mountains, where we meet one of our first main characters, a young monk by the name of Omi, who is basically the latest in a long line of Xiaolin monks who are trained to be guardians of the earth should the balance of good and evil ever be disturbed, with Omi being chosen as the mystical Xiaolin dragon of water. And he takes this job very seriously, as he practices day and night to perfect his fighting techniques, get everything right, make sure that he gets everything down pat, so that even the most minor of flaws are gone. Which is kind of a detriment, because when the episode opens, we see him training in the yard of the temple, in the middle of a rainstorm, which is what leads to his master, a man by the name of Master Feng, and tell him that he needs to come in, and that while he appreciates him training to this extent, he also tells him he needs to take care of his body as well, and it's probably not prudent to be training in the middle of the rain. Basically, you can't really do all that mystical protecting shit if you catch a cold, is what I'm saying. So Omi reluctantly goes back inside, where he gets another chewing out by another character in the series, a little dragon by the name of Dojo. I don't know, they do say his full name, I think it's Dojo, Komojo, I don't know. It's basically, they just call him Dojo. And the thing is, Dojo was apparently a companion of Dashi, as Dojo was the one that helped Dashi hide the Shengang Wu, and for the last few thousand years, it's been his job to guard a mystical scroll which is connected to the Shengang Wu. Though Dojo doesn't really take the job that seriously anymore, because for thousands of years, nothing has happened. In his own words, the scroll has done nothing but collect dust all these years, so he doesn't really have to bother with keeping a close enough eye on it, though Master Feng tells him that he really should attend to it, so Dojo reluctantly goes. As such, either way, once that's done, Master Feng tells Omi that he's got some news for him. Mainly, there are going to be some new Xiaolin trainees coming to the temple, which Omi is surprised by because this never happened before in his lifetime. And Omi naturally assumes that he's going to be training them. He'll be teaching them all his techniques, including walking on walls, hiding behind things, and walking on two fingers. And so basically he's excited to see them so he can be a teacher. And so Master Feng brings him to these students, which are three different people from various parts of the world. You have Raimundo, who's this kid from Brazil, Kimiko, a young girl from Japan, and Clay, this basically rustic cowboy from Texas. That's not even a joke. He is basically a cowboy. He's even got the hat and everything. Point is, they're going to be training here as well, and Master Feng leaves them in Omi's care, though when Omi sees them, he's kind of surprised that they're the new trainees. Mostly because he doesn't really understand them. The thing is, Omi is very much isolated when it comes to it. As we learn later in the series, apparently he grew up in the temple, so he's not really understanding of the ways of the world. And so when he sees Raimundo, Kimiko, and Clay, he thinks they're a bit strangely attired and doesn't really get their attitude, so to speak. So he doesn't really understand why they're basically going to be training here at the temple. But either way, he tries to put his best foot forward as he leads them outside and tries to impart on them lessons, including the whole walking at two fingers thing. But nobody's really taking him seriously. When Kimiko is just texting with and calling with her friend the whole time, which makes Omi curious because he's never seen technology before. Clay at one point during a lesson actually hog-ties Omi when he tries showing him self-defense and all that, and Raimundo, just to be a dick, pantses Omi, just to embarrass him. So, as such, yeah, training's not really going well. But as this is going on, it's here we're introduced to our first big bad of the series. Evil boy genius Jack Spicer, as the episode cuts over to his house, as we see him ranting and raving in his basement about how he wants to rule the whole world. That's not even a joke or an exaggeration. That's exactly what he's doing. He is actually screaming, "I want to rule the world," like a spoiled little brat. And we see that he is apparently a very technologically inclined kid because the whole basement has essentially been converted into a lab, and Jack himself even has his own, army of robots that he calls Jackbots. And it's during this particular rant that one of the Jackbots actually brings Jack something. In this case, it's a gift from Jack's father, a puzzle box, which Jack seems a little excited by because, hey, puzzle boxes usually contain prizes. And as such, Jack manages to open up the puzzle box, and inside he finds a mask, which he thinks, oh, that's a lame gift, and he just chucks the puzzle box away before he goes back to ranting and raving about how he's going to take over the world and what routes he should take in order to do that. Unfortunately, while Jack's back is turned, the puzzle box opens back up, and we see a purple mist start to rise up from it before it starts taking on a more, I want to say, humanish form. It's not really human, and I'm only really calling it human because the mask that Jack saw turns into the face. There are some wisps that sprout out behind it that look like hair, and two wisps that look like their arms, while the main body is basically a ghostly tail. Basically, if you can't really tell, the puzzle box that Jack opened up was the mystical puzzle box that Dashi used against Wuya, and this spirit that arose from said puzzle box is Wuya herself. Apparently, the years have not been kind to the Xiaolin witch, because upon arising from the box, she does not regain a physical form. Rather, she is now a spirit, incorporeal, unable to do anything. But she is interested in the ranting, raving boy with technology who wants to take over the world. And so as Jack is ranting, she comes in and basically says, "Oh, you seem to want to take over the world. We have much in common, boy." Of course, Jack doesn't really listen to that because he thinks, "Holy shit, there's a ghost here. Jackbots, take care of that thing." But of course, since Wui is a ghost, nothing. The Jackbots attacks do nothing. As such, Wuya starts talking to Jack, and she gives him a lowdown off screen about what her deal is. That she's an incorporeal witch, and that she wants to take over the world as well. And that if Jack helps her, then he'll have a place at her side. And which Jack is all for. After all, he wants to take over the world as well. So they basically have a nugget in common. And Wuya says that she has the means to be able to help Jack, and how she wants to help him is by finding the Shenggong Wu, promising Jack that if they can find the Shenggong Wu, they'll give them the power to, take over the world. And while Wuya's reappearance doesn't go unnoticed by the good guys, for back at the Xiaolin Temple, Master Feng and various other unnamed monks who really aren't important to the series are sitting around meditating when suddenly they all feel something. They sense something, a shift in the balance of good and evil. And so sure enough, they go to the scroll that Dojo is supposed to be guarding, and while most of them can't tell why this shift's happened at all, Master Feng has figured it out. He realizes that somehow, some way, Wuya has returned. Which means that, the Xiaolin monks need to go out and find the Shenggong Wu. Because Master Feng knows that if Wuya is able to find the Shenggong Wu, then she's obviously going to want to use them to take over the world. Which means finding them is now a high priority. As such, Master Feng assembles Omi and the other three monks, and pretty much just gives them the lowdown. And while some of them aren't taking this whole exposition dump seriously, aka Raimundo, Raimundo because he's wondering why the hell his bed is just a mat. Basically, all of them realize that whatever Master Funk is talking about is something that they should be at least listening to. And as such, Master Funk appoints them to go out and find the Shenggong Wu, which is actually very easy to do, because the thing is, with the balance of good and evil shifted, all the Shenggong Wu around the world are, well, revealing themselves, so to speak. The idea is that I think the Shenggong Wu can be utilized even if they haven't revealed themselves, but whenever they do reveal themselves, it causes a sudden shift. Think of it like this. Think of it like this. Just as the monks felt a shift in the balance of good and evil when Wu Ya awakened, well, there are certain other individuals who are sensitive to Shenggong Wu when their power flares up. And in this case, those two people are Dojo, and as we learn in a later episode, Wuya. And the thing about the two of them is that when a Shenggong Wu activates, the pair of them can sense the Shenggong Wu and zero in on them. And so that's what the Xiaolin monks do. Xiaolin monks do as once they get the mission done, they go to the scroll that Dojo is supposed to be guarding. And the scroll apparently has information on every single Shenggong Wu in the world, with the first to reveal itself being a coin called the Mantis Flip Coin, which is supposed to, as the name implies, allow whoever utilizes it to flip like a mantis. As such, with the target in mind, everybody suits up to get ready to go, with Dojo providing transportation because while he may look small and shrimpy, he has the power to shapeshift, specifically shapeshift into a big-ass dragon, which he demonstrates when Raimundo calls him a gecko, and he decides to retaliate by turning into said dragon form and telling him to never do that again. As such, Dojo takes Omi and the monks to the location of the first Shenggong Wu, which in this case is located in San Francisco in Chinatown. And so everyone wants to try and spread, once the group arrives, everyone wants to spread out and find the Shenggong Wu, but sadly Jack Spicer got there first, as once everyone tries looking around, he makes himself known, and because Jack Spicer doesn't know what the word subtle means, he basically is just holding up the Shenggong Wu in full view, proclaiming that everyone should bow to him because he has the Mantis Flip Coin. Which Wuya tells Jack that just owning the Mantis Flip Coin is not going to get him the chance to rule the world. It's just one Shenggong Wu, and as we established, the powers it gives aren't really something that would allow you to just easily take over the world. It just means he can flip really well. If Jack really wants all the power, then he needs to find all the Shenggong Wu, and well, there are hundreds, which means this is going to be a very, very long journey, which even Jack's a little annoyed by. But either way, once the monks see Jack with a Shenggong Wu, Omi, because he's oblivious, immediately asks politely for Jack to hand the Shenggong Wu over, but Jack pretty much tells him to piss off, with the appearance of Wuya by his side confirming to Omi and Dojo that Jack is not on the up and up. As such, Jack, to try and get Omi and Ko off his back, summons his Jackbots to fight them, which does lead to honestly fun fight scene, but while Kimiko, Raimundo, and Clay are duking it out with the Jackbots, Omi tries going after Jack Spicer, only to fail, because sadly, while Raimundo, Kimiko, and Clay may not be as trained as Omi, all of them are good fighters, but they're not a team yet. And as a result, while they are taking care of all the various robots, their fighting gets in each other's way, and also accidentally throws Omi off his game as he tries chasing after Jack, only to get smacked into by Clay, who got smacked into by a robot. Put simply, Jack Spicer manages to get away via a jetpack, and Omi is just disappointed that the Xiaolin monks were able to let Jack get away with such a powerful artifact. As such, they apologize to Omi and tell him they'll do better next time. And well, next time comes sooner than anyone would expect, as Dojo starts reacting as a new Shenggong Wu reveals itself. In this case, a tunic called the 2-ton tunic, which is supposed to be able to transform into an impenetrable set of armor that basically weighs a ton. As such, the group goes to Italy, where the 2-ton tunic is, and while Jack does once again beat them to the punch, they're able to get the 2-ton tunic away from him, though sadly, when Nomi tries using said 2-ton tunic, he does it on a dock, which causes him and the other Xiaolin monks to fall into the water, embarrassing them all, but hey, they at least got the Shenggong Wu away from Jack while he's just stuck in a boat. So, all's well that ends well, at least. As such, while Wuya chastises Jack the same way that Omi chastised the other monks, well, again, there's still other Shengang Wu out there, and once again, another one has revealed itself. In this case, a talisman called the Eye of Dashi, which is supposed to be able to have the power to shoot lightning out of it. As such, everybody makes a grab for where the Eye of Dashi is, and while they don't really give any specifics on where this particular Shengang Wu is, it does seem to be out in an open field somewhere in the mountains, and it's, well, just hanging off of a tree. So it looks like just an easy grab. So Omi rushes in to grab it, only for Jack to come out of nowhere and grab it too, resulting in a little tug of war between them as both lay claim to the Shengang Wu. However, this is where again the title of the series comes in, as the Eye of Dashi begins glowing, and when Jack wants to know what the hell this is, Omi proclaims that this is a Xiaolin showdown, which again, as Dojo exposits, is something that occurs when two or more people grab at a Shengang Wu and are in a stalemate. And as such, with the Eye of Dashi glowing, Omi basically issues a challenge to Jack. Basically, nearby there are a set of stone steps. Basically, the challenge is that the Eye of Dashi is going to be resting at the end of these stone steps. Whoever can jump across them first and get to the Eye of Dashi first will be the victor, claiming both the Eye of Dashi and the other challenger Shengang Wu. As such, Wuya urges Jack to accept the challenge, and so Jack does, and thus the Xiaolin showdown begins, which also brings again one of the coolest aspects of a Xiaolin showdown. It likes to alter the world around the challengers, and in this case, when the showdown kicks in, of course the Eye of Dashi is resting at the end of the stone platforms, and so Omi and Jack are on standby. But immediately the stone platforms rise up into the air and actually go so high up that they're actually above the clouds, which actually shocks everybody. As while Omi apparently was educated on what a Xiaolin showdown is, even he didn't think that this was going to happen, which, again, kind of makes sense. The earliest that they've actually been able to learn about a Xiaolin showdown is through the legends of Dashi, at least I assume. And considering that Shengang Wu have actually been hidden all around the world up until this point, it's not like anyone would have a basis to figure out that, hey, this is what a Xiaolin showdown does. Except Dojo, who apparently did know about all this, and basically just tells Omi, yeah, you never know what to expect with them. But either way, with a shout, everybody gets ready. The challenge begins as Jack immediately tries using the Mantis flip coin to jump from platform to platform, even though he has a jetpack. While Omi activates a 2-ton tunic, which is kind of a dumb move, if you ask me, because this thing weighs a ton, and you're supposed to be jumping from platform to platform. That's gonna be kind of a detriment, my young friend. But either way, Omi tries working with what he's got as he tries jumping from platform to platform as well. And while Jack has definitely got some headway on him, he decides, hey, I might as well cheat anyway. And so he summons some Jackbots who Jack just tells them, I don't care how you do it, just make sure to keep him away from me. As such, the Jackbots come in and try sabotaging Omi, and while Omi at first is having a little issues, well, it turns out throughout this episode that Omi's been getting some kind of sort of help from the other monks, as one by one they've each been giving him advice. When the monks first encountered Jack Spicer, Clay was able to use his strength to knock around the robots, and the exact wording was, it's not how you weigh, but how you use it. And so basically Omi's able to use that to his advantage, to use the 2-ton tunic to destroy a Jackbot when it flies at him. And then likewise, while the group was on their way to San Francisco, Kimiko showed Omi a handheld video game system, and Raimundo, as a joke, turned it off, because Omi, not familiar with how video games work, thought that meant it killed his little friend in the game, only for Kimiko to let him know, oh no, he just turned it off, I'll turn it back on. And so Omi uses that knowledge to jump on one of the Jackbots and just flip its off switch, because Jack made it obvious. Again, I'll get to that later. My point, either way, with the Jackbots taken care of, Omi is able to catch up with Jack Spicer, and while it's clear that if Jack keeps going, he'll still win, well, he decides to stop and gloat a bit, as he starts immediately insulting Omi, how Omi will never measure up to his pure genius. And so while he's doing this, Omi decides to take the lesson he learned from Raimundo, and he pantses Jack, which embarrasses Jack so much that as he tries pulling his pants up, Omi is able to get ahead of him and reach the Eye of Dashi. And thus, he wins the challenge, winning both the Eye of Dashi and the Mantis flip coin from Jack. So good. So there you go. The good guys won, and everything is all good. And as such, by the end of the episode, all four monks arrive back at the Xiaolin Temple, and Kimiko, Clay, and Raimundo all have now been garbed in their own robes similar to Omi. So it's clear that they're here to stay, and they still have much to learn. With Omi thinking that she still has much to learn as a teacher as well. Only for Master Feng to kind of drop one little load on Omi. They're not here to be taught by Omi. If anything, they're there to teach Omi himself. They're there to teach Omi himself, which even he's surprised by because because after all, is it Omi the chosen one, the Xiaolin Dragon of Water? Well, it turns out that these other three students, they're also here to be taught as Xiaolin dragons. They're also chosen ones. With Raimundo supposedly to be the Xiaolin Dragon of Wind, Kimiko the Xiaolin Dragon of Fire, and Clay the Xiaolin Dragon of Earth. And they're all here to be trained like Omi is, while also teaching him some new things as well. Something that Omi is actually shocked by as he wonders why Master Feng didn't just tell him right away, and Master Feng said he was going to, but he wanted to wait till Omi was ready. And, well, the episode ends when Omi passes out, and Clay thinks that maybe Omi wasn't ready. And thus, that's the first episode of Xiaolin Showdown. My thoughts on it? Well, if you couldn't actually manage to stomach all my weird rambling, I'll say this. The episode was alright. It was just alright. As first episodes go, I admit, I think I've seen better starts to the series. But honestly, I think this episode as a beginning isn't bad. When it comes down to it, for me, the flaws mostly lie in its execution and pacing. The episode really likes getting the exposition out as quickly as possible. And as a result, it doesn't really give the episode enough time to allow this information to settle, as everything that we need to know about the series is thrown right out there in the first act. The stuff with Dashi and his battle with Wuya, what Shengang Wu are, establishing what the conflict is going to be, who the players are going to be, who the characters are. It's just a lot out there that it's just so much thrown out there at once that doesn't really give us time to register before all the characters have to go out and immediately find the Shengang Wu. And the thing is, even when they do start their journey for the Shengang Wu, that feels rushed too. Because after all, when it comes down to Xiaolin Showdown, most episodes in the series tend to have at least, one Xiaolin Showdown. Sometimes it's the climax of the episode, sometimes it's in the beginning and it's just there to help act as the inciting incident for future conflict. But ultimately, there is meant to be a Xiaolin Showdown there. And as I said, in order to have a Xiaolin Showdown, at least each participant has to at least have one Shengang Wu. So if the good guys and the bad guys are going to have a showdown fighting over one, then they need to arm themselves. Hence why they probably had to rush out and make sure that Jack got the Mantis flip coin while Omi got the 2-ton tunic. Basically, it's clear that they're trying to get as much out there as possible to try and further set up what the series is going to be. And I admit, it's just because so much is thrown at you, it doesn't really give you a lot of time to register it. Like I said, we got the exposition with the background for the series, and then when it gets to the actual action, it's just all rushed through. Pretty much explained very quickly, very precise, very concisely, and while in some regards that's a good way of helping get the ball rolling and moving everything along, when you're actually trying to establish a situation about about what your series is going to be, I do genuinely think that maybe you could step back a little and at least give your audience time to register all the information they have before rushing off and just getting right into the action, which again, I understand that in some cases that's necessary. That's necessary. Like I said, it's a beginning episode, and if you want to make sure that the children are interested in this stuff, of course you need to probably get right to the action. Even I admit, when I was a kid and watched this first episode, I was already familiar with Xiaolin Showdown, but when it came down to all the episodes, I was excited to watch all the action. I was excited to watch everything kicking ass. So I was willing to just kind of ignore all the quick exposition. But again, from a storytelling perspective, it does kind of leave you wanting a little, as because everything moves so fast, it doesn't really allow you time to fully invest in what's happening. With that said, though, because it gets everything out there as quickly as possible, it does at least help quickly establish everything that you need to know about the series and what you can expect from the series later on. After, like I said, it establishes who the bad guys are right from the get-go and what they want to do. They want to take over, they want to collect they want to collect the Shengang Wu and take over the world. It establishes who the good guys are and how they need to stop that, as they need to gather the Shengang Wu themselves. It establishes the rules with Dojo and Wuya and how they're essentially able to track the Shengang Wu. It showcases what a Xiaolin showdown is, and by the end of the episode, it further establishes what the end goal for each of these characters are. Where Omi having to learn from the other monks so that he can become a better person, and the other monks are going to be trained like Omi to be Xiaolin dragons themselves, each in a different element. As Omi's is supposed to be trained as a Xiaolin dragon of water, while Raimundo, Kimiko, and Clay are each meant to be essentially trained in a different style, with wind, fire, and earth respectively for all three of them. So in that regard, it at least gets it out. In that regard, it still gets everything out there and does at least ensure that the audience is going to know what to expect as the series goes along. By that same token, because the show gets everything out there so quickly, well, like I said, it gets the kids' attention and keeps them invested, especially with the action. The action, I think, is really cool, and because the whole thing with the Shengang Wu is that there's so many of them, it makes for a good storytelling engine, as every week you can always expect to see a new Shengang Wu reveal itself. And as we established with the 3 that we saw in this episode, each of the Shengang Wu does something unique and different. For the most part. I'll get to that when I talk about later episodes. But put simply, the Shengang, basically, it keeps you invested in seeing what's going to be the next thing revealed. What are they going to do? How are they going to do it? How will they find it? Where is it hidden? It basically is a good storytelling engine with a nice bit of world hopping and with a nice bit of essentially with a nice little world tour setup, because after all, the Shengang Wu are hidden everywhere. Every continent, every country, everywhere on the planet that the Shengang Wu could be hidden, they are hidden. And thus, it allows for a nice little bit of treasure hunting, so to speak, as the characters all have to go around the world and go to different environments and places to be able to find the new Wu of the week, so to speak, which I dig. I like that. It's pretty cool, and it does allow at least for more creative storytelling. So again, I dig that. It's nice. And of course, the Shengang Wu themselves are pretty unique and interesting. Again, we're starting small so far. The Shengang Wu we have here, they do kind of some basic stuff. The Mantis Flip Coin's abilities are, in my opinion, not that impressive, but still at least somewhat useful, especially with being able to flip. The 2-ton tunic could work in certain circumstances, mostly for defense, though the episode does showcase how it can be detrimental if you wish to use it in an actual battle, while the Eye of Dashi, in my opinion, is probably the most useful, just because it shoots fucking lightning. And that's awesome. So again, I like this. So again, it does work, and because again of the showcase of those 3 Wu, it makes you curious what the rest of the Shengang Wu in the series do. So to that, I at least think it's good. Add on all the action you got. It's a good way to keep you invested. And going off of how this first episode does still try to establish everything off the bat to be developed later, it does do a good job of at least setting up the characters. It sets up Omi and the other monks rather well. Because Omi was so isolated for so long, he's not really understanding of it, but because he's dedicated himself to his training so much, he's basically a child prodigy, so to speak. He can do a lot of things that these monks wouldn't even hope to do because he's trained to do them his whole life, but by that same token, he's also slightly arrogant, as once the other monks show up, he immediately assumes that he'll be teaching them, and that if they fail anywhere, then Omi has the full right to chastise them and chew them out because he's supposed to be their senior. They have to respect him. That's what he showcases when during his battle, when he's demonstrating kung fu techniques. Clay just easily hog-ties him, and he gets angry that he's not being shown the respect he thinks he deserves, which ultimately is what led him getting pantsed by Raimundo. So in that regard, it helps showcase that dynamic. Which is further showcased throughout the episode as everybody hunts for the Wu. And yeah, it's clear that while Omi may be talented, he still falters in some areas, especially since since he assumes that because he had all this training, he's immediately good at everything, as demonstrated when he got the 2-ton tunic, but upon activating it, wound up breaking the dock that everybody was standing on and caused everyone to fall into the river. And which, yeah, the next scene, he's just acting all proud, and that they have to essentially ignore this failure and all that. But it's clear that he should probably take some blame here. Likewise, with the other characters, while not a lot is established about who they are as people, they at least set the groundwork and blueprints for who these characters will become as the series goes along. Raimundo's kind of a joker who kind of plays to his own tune and kind of doesn't vibe with what everybody else is doing, as when everybody's getting the exposition about the Shengang Wu and how important they are, he's more concerned with his room and his bedding. There's Kimiko, who feels out of touch because she's always on her technology, but it's clear she's got a kind heart, as she's patient enough with Omi and understands he doesn't really understand these things, and so she's able to at least help him and demonstrates all their technology to him, and likewise when he gets upset, she helps him out and calms him down. So yeah, she does seem like a slight Cloud Cuckoo Lander, but otherwise she clearly has a kind soul, and also has a bit of an edge, as when Raimundo messes with Omi, she's the one to tell him to knock it the hell off and calm Omi down. So again, it's a nice little way of establishing that. And likewise, Clay is clearly meant to be the strong, silent, and patient type, it's kind of showcased that it feels like he's one of those who talk softly and carry a large stick, as he's big and strong, but the times he does talk are soft-spoken, kind, and usually has some words of wisdom. He's never rude, he's never mean. It's just that he's more action. It's just that he knows when to speak, and when he does act, he always acts with clarity. It doesn't always work out, as demonstrated when the team was still having trouble coordinating early on, which is another thing that they established, as the team is still young. They haven't really established themselves as a team yet. But at the very least, it's a good way of starting things off with it. But at the very least, it still showcases what kind of a person Clay is. And so, again, while there's nothing really built up from their characters from here, it at least sets the blueprints for who they're going to be. And likewise, by the end of the episode, since it showcases that that these guys are also going to be training alongside Omi and Xiaolin dragons, it at least does establish that it at least shows that there is going to be more character build on top of what we have here. So to that, I do actually like. So on the whole, when it comes down to when it comes down to first episodes of shows, I've seen better, but the Journey of 1,000 Miles is an alright beginning. Like I said, where it really falters is in its pacing. It really likes rushing everything out as quickly as possible, and as a result of that, nothing really has time to set in and nothing really has time to set in and be registered by the audience. The characters are quick. The exposition is quickly shoved in the first act. The characters we only get the characters we only get slight blueprints of and just get the basic character archetypes, and likewise when it gets to the action, they're just trying to rush through things as quickly as possible just to get to the big primo action stuff with the Xiaolin showdown. So to that, it does have its faults, but for what it does right, it at least does right. Yeah, like I said, the exposition, while quick, does at least establish the kind of mystical nature of everything. The setup with the Shengang Wu and how they're hidden at least offers a nice beginning, as it showcases, as it's a nice storytelling engine, because they're all hidden all over the world. It allows our characters to go to different places of the world, because it goes to different environments, which leads to a lot of new potential. The main characters all have the dynamics we establish with the characters are nice. The Shengang Wu that we find are unique enough that they at least give us a preview of what we can expect later in the series. And likewise, and I forgot to talk about this, when it comes down to the villains, they're also clearly meant to be just your clear Saturday morning villains. While Wuya is built up as this big bad bitch who wants to take over the world, at present all she is just kind of an advisor. Because her physical body is gone and she's nothing more than a ghostly spirit, she has to rely on whomever she can influence to do her dirty work for her, which in this case is Jack Spicer. And while she clearly likes to act as the little devil on the shoulder, tempting everyone, it's also clear that being in a box for thousands of years has kind of eroded her patience somewhat. As well, when Jack loses the 2-ton tunic, she immediately chews him out and gets angry at him. But then likewise, when presented with a Xiaolin showdown, she's quick to tell Jack She's quick to tell Jack, accept the challenge, accept it! It's clear that she really wants to take over the world as quickly as possible, and while she knows it's going to be a bit of a journey to find all the Shengang Wu, well, she thinks that the quickest way to make this thing go by, is to just find the Wu whenever you can and get rid of any potential threats. So again, she establishes her role as the advisor villain. Definitely someone who could be grander scope, but because of her current position, she has to rely on others. It's clear, like I said, a schemer, but a bit of an impatient one. She has some grandiosity to her, but she's tapped down, mostly because of her personality and her current physical station. And then likewise, we got Jack Spicer, who I'm just going to say right now is immediately established as your typical Saturday morning villain. His motivations are very simple. He just wants to take over the world. He's entitled, he's kind of a brat, he thinks he can do whatever the hell he wants, and while it's clear that while technical-wise he is intelligent, when it comes to actual execution, that's where he kind of falters, as he takes any kind of power he can get and flaunts it like nothing's business. He's in love with the sound of his voice, and it's clear that while he is definitely a bad guy, it's clear that he definitely is more in love with the minutia of being a villain rather than the whole villain thing. Oh, don't get me wrong! He wants to take over the world. He is more than willing to do it, and he's willing to kill whoever he has to do it, as the Jackbots are armed with various weapons and so forth that can easily kill any normal person that crosses his path. But when it comes down to it, he's more in love with the minutia that comes with being a villain, more than just being effective at it. Case in point, he could have very easily won the Xiaolin showdown. He was far enough ahead of Omi that if he had just kept jumping, he could have grabbed the Eye of Dashi. But because he stopped to summon Jackbots, it allowed Omi time to catch up to him. And then likewise, when he waited for Omi to catch up to him again, just so he could exposit at him, it left him open enough for Omi to pants him, which distracted him enough for Omi to go forth and grab the Eye of Dashi. Which means that, which honestly, if Jack was more concerned with winning the fight and actually getting everything done, he wouldn't have done all that. He could have still ranted at Omi when he won, but he was more concerned with the moment, with gloating about his victory before he even got the chance, which in turn establishes that while he wants to be a villain, he's more in love with what comes with being a villain than actually doing the evil deeds successfully. He does want to win in the end. He just doesn't really know how he wants to get there. So in that regard, he kind of comes across as your typical Saturday morning villain. Not awful, but definitely humorous enough to keep your attention. So with that all said, it's like I said, this first episode does a good job of at least establishing the villains. They do fit well for the setup they're trying to do, and overall, like I said, while this first episode definitely has its problems in terms of pacing and getting out there, as a first episode, it is still alright. The elements it introduces are scant enough that they can be built on later. We're given enough of a taste of what to expect from the rest of the series that it keeps us wanting more. We at least get enough basic character archetypes and set up enough dynamics to keep us interested in where things are going to go, and the villains themselves are clearly meant to be there as your typical Saturday morning villains. Nothing too grand and majestic, but at least enough to keep you entertained and wanting to see more of what they do. So on the whole, the first episode of Xiaolin Showdown is just alright. Not perfect, definitely has its flaws, but for what it does right, it's just an alright episode. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hope to see you next week as we look at episode 2. So till then, I hope you have a good Friday, and take care.